Have you ever, tried to comprehend the physics of what happens if you line up 57 dominoes?
Oh, man. The geometric progression thing.
Yes, exactly. But, where you make each one just 50% larger than the one right before it.
Right. Which, I mean, it sounds simple enough in theory.
It sounds so simple. You flick the first domino, and it's just 2 inches tall.
Basically, a little piece of plastic.
Right. And it knocks over a 3-inch domino, and then a 4.5-inch one.
Mm-hmm. And it scales up fast.
So fast. By the time you get to just the 18th domino, you're knocking over a structure the size of the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Which is wild to even picture.
And it gets crazier. The 23rd domino is the Eiffel Tower.
Wow.
The 31st is, towering 3,000 feet over the peak of Mount Everest.
That's just the human brain isn't built to process that kind of exponential scale.
No, it's really not. And that 57th domino, the final one in the chains.
Yeah.
If you let that one fall, it literally bridges the entire distance between the Earth and the Moon.
It's the perfect illustration of how geometric progression actually works.
Yeah.
Because, we're so used to thinking in linear terms, right? Like 1 unit of effort equals 1 unit of reward.
Yes, exactly. Like a 1-to-1 ratio.
Right. We assume that if we want these massive results in our careers or our personal lives, we have to exert this massive simultaneous amount of energy across the board.
Look, we think we literally need to push the Leaning Tower of Pisa over with our bare hands.
Exactly. But the math and the physics, they tell a completely different story.
Right.
The secret isn't pushing harder on everything all at once. The secret is finding that initial 2-inch domino, that single point of leverage, and just concentrating all your energy right there.
And that brings us to the mission of our deep dive today. Because we are diving into the core principles of Gary Keller's book, The One Thing.
Such a fantastic source material for this.
It really is, because the goal today is to give you, the listener, a radically simple but honestly very counterintuitive shortcut to being highly effective.
We really want to deconstruct this whole pervasive myth of doing it all.
Because doing it all is destroying us.
It is. It's totally unsustainable.
And to set the stage for this, I actually want to go back to 1991. Not a physics lab, but a movie set.
Oh, City Slickers. I know exactly where you're going with this.
Yes, because this whole concept was immortalized in that classic comedy. You've got Mitch, played by Billy Crystal.
Who is basically the quintessential, burned out, overwhelmed city guy.
Exactly. He's juggling a million priorities. He's totally desperate for meaning. And he's riding next to Curly, this hardened cowboy played by Jack Palance.
Right.
And Curly stops his horse, looks Mitch dead in the eye, and asks if he knows the secret of life.
And Mitch, of course, has absolutely no clue.
None. So Curly holds up a single leather-gloved finger. And he says, one thing, just one thing. You stick to that and everything else don't mean shut.
I mean, the writers probably just thought they were scripting a gritty character moment for Palance, right?
It's just a cool movie quote.
But they accidentally wrote, one of the most profound summaries of business strategy and personal productivity ever captured on film.
It's so true, because Mitch naturally asks, what the one thing is.
And Curly just replies that it's up to Mitch to figure that out.
Right. And that is the fundamental challenge we're unpacking today. How do you find your 2-inch domino?
Because the disconnect for most people, and I'm sure anyone looking at their calendar right now feels this, is that life doesn't feel like one thing.
No, not at all. It feels like 1,000 conflicting demands.
Right. To understand how one small thing translates into world-changing success, we really have to look at how success actually unfolds.
Yeah, because we tend to view success as simultaneous, don't we?
We do. We want the great job, the perfect health, the deep relationships, and the financial freedom, all at the exact same moment.
Right now.
Exactly. But success is sequential. It builds on itself, just like the potential energy stored in those dominoes.
And there's a great case study from the book on this Gary Keller's own professional crisis.
Yeah, this is a fascinating part of his background.
Right, because he had built this prominent company with international ambitions, but eventually the entire operation just stalled.
He hit a ceiling.
He hit a massive ceiling. And the harder he worked, the worse things got. His personal life was fraying, his business was plateauing.
I think he described feeling like he was at the end of a short rope that looked an awful lot like a noose.
Yeah, that was the exact quote. And when you're in that state of total burnout, the natural human instinct is to, add more to the to-do list.
Oh, 100%. We think we need a complex 50-point turnaround plan to fix a complex problem.
Right. But Keller brings in a business coach who looks at this massive org chart mapped out on a wall. And he doesn't give him a 50-point plan.
No, he tells Keller there's only one thing he actually needs to do.
Just one.
He says he needs to hire 14 specific people for 14 key positions.
Which the coach even jokes, Jesus only needed 12, but Keller is going to need 14.
Yeah, it's a great line. But the crucial pivot here isn't just the coach's advice, It's how Keller executed it.
Right, because he didn't just add it to his plate.
No, he didn't casually hire 14 executives on his existing mountain of responsibilities. He made a radical structural change. He fired himself.
Wait, he fired himself as CEO?
Yes. He stepped down from the role so that he could make finding and recruiting those specific 14 individuals his absolute singular focus.
Wow, he literally eliminated all the other noise.
He essentially cleared the entire board, and the compounding results were staggering. By focusing on that one structural move, the company had sustained growth averaging 40% year over year.
40%?
For nearly a decade.
That is insane. So when his focus was narrow, his success was massive.
Exactly. When his focus had been fractured across 100 different CEO duties, his success was fractured too. He had to go small to go big.
Which takes us right back to the dominoes.
It really does.
Because in 2009, there was this event in the Netherlands Domino Day, and they lined up over 4.4 million standard-sized dominoes.
It's just a ridiculous amount of dominoes.
Right. And a single flick of the first piece initiated a chain reaction that unleashed over 94,000 joules of energy.
Which is, I think they said that's roughly the energy required for an adult male to do over 500 push-ups.
545 push-ups, yeah, all from a single tap of a little plastic tile.
And this is key, that's a linear progression. Those dominoes were all the exact same size.
Right. Which brings us to the 1983 study, the one published in the American Journal of Physics by Lorne Whitehead.
Yeah, Whitehead is the one who proved that a domino doesn't just have enough kinetic energy to knock over a domino of equal size.
Right. It can topple one that is 50% larger and thicker.
And they actually tested this physically, didn't they?
Yeah, in San Francisco in 2001, a physicist built a set of 8 plywood dominoes scaling at that exact 50% ratio.
Oh, wow.
The first one was 2 inches. The 8th one was 3 feet tall and incredibly heavy.
So that visual of that tiny tick leading to a massive thundering slam a few seconds later, that is the physical embodiment of going small.
It really is. And if we extrapolate that physics principle to the business world, we start seeing this sequential growth pattern everywhere.
Oh, everywhere. The market consistently rewards businesses that figure out their lead domino. Look at KFC.
Colonel Sanders.
Right. KFC didn't start with a sprawling menu of sides and sandwiches. It was a single, heavily guarded chicken recipe.
Or look at Coors. The Adolf Coors Company grew 1,500% between 1947 and 1967 by operating a single brewery producing exactly one product.
Just one beer. And Google is probably the most prevalent modern example.
Right, because they do 1,000 things now. Phones, self-driving cars, maps, email.
But one thing their lead domino is search.
Search is the engine.
Exactly. The supremacy of their search engine is the massive underlying foundation that funds all those peripheral bets.
It's like Star Wars, too. People debate whether the movies or the toys are the core of the franchise, since the merch generates billions more than the box office.
Right, but the movies are the lead domino.
Exactly. Without the films creating the cultural mythology, no one is buying a plastic lightsaber.
Apple did this same geometric progression, but chronologically.
Oh, how so?
Well, they didn't flood the market with a dozen different gadgets all at once. They went sequential. Macs led to iMacs, which established the design language.
Right.
That paved the way for iTunes, which created the ecosystem for the iPod.
And the iPod put Apple in everyone's pocket, which was the foundational domino for the iPhone.
Exactly. Each product created a halo effect, a surge of brand loyalty that made the next larger domino possible.
Okay, so the physics make sense. The corporate case studies make sense. But if we pull this down to the individual listener, if it is mathematically this clear that finding the single point of leverage is the path to massive results.
Yeah.
Why do we wake up every morning and immediately try to push the Eiffel Tower over by hand?
It's so true.
Like, why is the default state of the modern worker a 3-page, chaotic to-do list?
Well, because the real world doesn't neatly line up our tasks in order of increasing size, right?
Right. It's just a mess.
Exactly. The world presents us with a chaotic jumble of incoming demands, emails, crises, social obligations.
So we just default to chaos.
We default to chaos because we operate under a deeply ingrained set of cultural myths about productivity.
The lies.
Yes. The source material identifies 6 specific lies of success. These are concepts repeated so frequently in corporate culture that they feel like absolute truths.
But they're actually the exact roadblocks preventing us from finding our leverage.
Precisely. We have to dismantle these lies before we can build a functional system.
Let's do it. So, lie number 1 is the most pervasive. The idea that everything matters equally.
Which is the fundamental flaw of the traditional to-do list.
Yes, because when you write down 20 tasks on a sheet of paper, the paper doesn't differentiate between the task that will change your career and the task that's just like busy work.
Right, they both take up a single line. They look equal.
To counter this, we have to look back to the late 19th century and an Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto.
Ah, the Pareto principle.
Exactly. He observed a mathematical pattern regarding wealth distribution in Italy specifically, that 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the population.
But it wasn't until decades later that a quality control pioneer named Joseph Juran realized this wasn't just about Italian real estate.
Right. It was a universal law of inputs and outputs.
Juran called it the vital few and the trivial many, which we now commonly refer to as the 80-20 rule.
And the 80-20 rule implies an extreme imbalance in how the universe operates. It means a tiny minority of your effort is going to generate the vast majority of your results.
So if everything doesn't matter equally, treating everything equally is a massive misallocation of your time.
Right. A to-do list becomes a trap.
Because it incentivizes you to check off the easy, trivial things just to feel a sense of completion.
While the vital few tasks just sit there untouched.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to ruthlessly prune a to-do list until it transforms into a prioritized success list.
I love that. A success list. And that pruning process requires focus, which is completely destroyed by lie number 2, multitasking.
Oh, multitasking. We have elevated this to a core professional virtue.
We really have. People brag about it in job interviews.
We view the ability to keep 6 plates spinning as a sign of high cognitive function.
But the neuroscience completely invalidates that. There's a fascinating study out of Stanford by a researcher named Clifford Nass.
Right. Nass set out to study heavy multitaskers because he assumed they must possess some unique cognitive architecture.
He thought they had figured out a secret to filtering information efficiently.
He ran them through tests, analyzing their memory, their ability to filter out irrelevant information, and their speed in switching from one task to another.
And he expected them to excel.
He did, but the data revealed they were abysmal at all of it. They couldn't filter out background noise, they couldn't organize their memories effectively, and ironically, they were even slower at switching between tasks than people who focused on one thing at a time.
Yeah, Nass famously concluded that heavy multitaskers are just suckers for irrelevancy.
Suckers for irrelevancy. It hurts because it's true.
It really does. When you switch context, say, from writing a complex report to answering a quick Slack message, and then back to the report, your brain has to shut down one set of rules and load up another.
And that transition isn't instantaneous.
No, it drains glucose from your brain. It leaves a residue of attention on the previous task.
So you aren't actually doing 2 things at once. You're just rapidly and inefficiently switching between them, degrading your performance on both.
Which naturally leads people to think, okay, well, if I can't multitask, I just need to force myself to focus on one thing. I need to be more disciplined.
And that brings us to lie number 3, a disciplined life.
We have this image of highly successful people as these robotic monks of pure, unwavering discipline.
Like they just grit their teeth and muscle through every distraction.
But the reality is much more forgiving. Success doesn't require you to be a permanently disciplined person.
Right. It's not a marathon of sheer willpower. It's a short sprint.
You only need just enough discipline to form a new habit. Because once a behavior becomes a habit, the cognitive load drops drastically.
It requires far less conscious effort to maintain a habit than it does to initiate one.
And research from University College London indicates it takes an average of 66 days to forge a new habit.
So it's not the 21 days often quoted in pop psychology.
No, it requires roughly 2 months of targeted discipline. You don't need a disciplined life. You just need to deploy your disciplines sequentially, 66 days at a time.
To build the foundational habits that will automatically knock down your next domino.
Exactly. And if discipline is just the initial spark to build a habit, that totally reframes how we view line number 4. Willpower is always on will call.
Yes. I always treated willpower like a muscle I could just flex whenever I needed it.
Same. But the source material treats willpower more like a battery on your smartphone.
It is a highly finite resource. Every time you make a decision, resist a temptation, suppress an emotion, or try to focus in a noisy environment, you are draining that battery.
It's what psychologists call decision fatigue.
Right. So if you wait until 4:00 p.m. to tackle your most important, cognitively demanding task, you are trying to power a heavy machine with a battery that's in the red.
Your willpower is tapped out just from navigating the trivial choices of the day.
Which means we have to structure our days so that our most important work aligns with our peak willpower reserves.
Usually first thing in the morning.
Exactly. We can't rely on will call.
And structuring your day that way completely shatters line number 5, a balanced life.
Well, this is a big one. We are culturally obsessed with work-life balance. We hold it up as the ultimate ideal.
But the book argues the pursuit of perfect balance is actually a recipe for mediocrity.
I want to dig into this because it sounds almost heretical. How is striving for balance a bad thing?
Well, think about what perfect balance actually requires. It requires giving equal time and energy to every aspect of your life, your career, your family, your health, your hobbies.
Right.
If you distribute your time equally, you are, by definition, preventing yourself from giving concentrated time to any one thing.
And extraordinary results require extreme focus.
Exactly. If you act on a true priority, you inherently go out of balance. The goal isn't equilibrium. The goal is counterbalancing.
Let's visualize that. So instead of a scale that is perfectly even, we should think of a pendulum.
Yes. Perfect balance is a pendulum hanging dead center, totally motionless. Counterbalancing is knowing when to let the pendulum swing hard to one extreme and then intentionally pulling it back.
So in your professional life, you have to embrace the swing to the extreme. You give disproportionate time to your lead domino, which means accepting that other lesser priorities are going to get ignored for a while.
Right. And this is critical in your personal life with your health and your family. You cannot let the pendulum stay at the work extreme forever.
Or those personal areas will snap.
Exactly. You counterbalance by being completely, deeply present at home, leaving work entirely at the office. You linger at the extremes of focus when it's appropriate.
That sounds beautiful in theory, but let's apply this to a real corporate environment.
Okay.
If I go to my manager tomorrow and say, hey, I am counterbalancing, I've identified Project A as my lead domino, so I am going to completely ignore Projects B, C, D, and E for the next month.
You're probably going to get fired.
I'm definitely going to get fired. My manager wants all 5 projects completed. How does someone navigate this reality without destroying their career?
It's a completely valid fear. The key is that you don't just blindly drop the other projects in silence. You use the concept of leverage.
Okay, how?
You have to analyze those 5 projects and communicate why focusing relentlessly on Project A will actually accelerate the completion of the others.
Like maybe Project A establishes a workflow template that cuts the time for B and C in half.
Exactly. You don't ignore the chaos randomly. You strategically starve the trivial many to feed the vital few. And you manage expectations by communicating that priority upward.
That requires a level of confidence and vision that brings us perfectly to the final lie. Lie number 6. Big is bad.
We often have a subconscious fear of massive success because we associate big with stress, complexity, and overwhelming pressure.
We create artificial ceilings for ourselves.
We really do. And if you view big success as dangerous, you will subconsciously sabotage the actions required to get there. You'll play small to stay safe.
But thinking small is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The source material shares the story of Arthur Guinness, the founder of the famous brewery.
Oh, this story is amazing.
Right. When he acquired his first brewery in Dublin in 1759, he didn't sign a 10-year lease. He didn't sign a 100-year lease.
He signed a 9,000-year lease.
A 9,000-year lease. That is an almost incomprehensible level of belief in the longevity of what you are building.
It forces you to operate differently. If you're building a company to last 10 years, you make one set of decisions. If you're building it to last 9,000 years, you engineer the foundation entirely differently.
Precisely. Aiming for exponential growth demands fundamentally different actions than aiming for incremental growth. You have to remove the artificial ceiling and allow yourself to ask much bigger questions.
And that is the perfect pivot. We've cleared the brush.
We know what not to do.
Right. We know treating everything equally is a trap, multitasking is neurologically impossible, discipline is just a bridge to a habit, willpower is finite, balance is a myth, and small thinking restricts our actions.
So now we need the tool to figure out what we must do. We need the master key.
And the transition from the philosophy to the application centers entirely on one specific mechanism. It is a daily practice called the focusing question.
This is the filter you use to navigate the chaos of your inbox, your career, and your life.
The wording of this question is incredibly deliberate. It is not, what should I get done today? That just leads to a massive list.
Right.
The focusing question is, what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary?
I want to take this apart piece by piece, because there is no wasted language here. And let's start with the first clause. What's the one thing?
It immediately forces a decision.
Yes. It eliminates the possibility of a top 3 list, or hedging your bets. It demands that you comb through all your options and identify the single most critical point of leverage.
It forces you to prioritize. And then the next part is incredibly grounding. I can do.
It sounds simple, but it shifts the mindset from intention to execution.
Exactly. It's not asking what I should do in a perfect world or what I wish I had the resources to do. It asks what I can do right now, given my current constraints and reality.
It demands immediate, actionable behavior. And then we reach the payload of the question, such that by doing it, everything else would be easier or unnecessary.
This is the Archimedes lever test.
Archimedes famously claimed that with a lever long enough, he could move the world.
Right. This final clause is asking you to find that lever. Will completing this one task fundamentally reduce the friction on all your other goals?
Or better yet, will it render a dozen other tasks completely obsolete?
It's the difference between picking 100 individual locks on 100 different doors or spending your morning finding the one master key that opens them all.
Finding the key is the one thing that makes picking the locks unnecessary.
Yes. And this question operates on 2 different frequencies. It serves as a big picture map, right? Like, what is the one thing I want to achieve in my life or my marriage or my career this decade?
But it also functions as a small focus compass. You can ask it on a micro level. What is the one thing I can do right now in the next 60 minutes to move my project forward?
It bridges the gap between grand ambition and daily execution.
But to leverage this question effectively, you have to understand how to formulate a great input. The book outlines this concept of the path to great answers.
Right, because if you ask a mediocre question, you get a mediocre answer. A great question has to be 2 things. It must be big, and it must be specific.
Let's use a sales scenario. A small, broad question would be, how can we get more sales?
It's vague, and it doesn't challenge the existing systems. You could increase sales by $1 and technically succeed.
Exactly. A big, broad question is, how can we double sales? It's ambitious, but it lacks a timeline or a metric.
Right, and a small, specific question is, how can we increase sales by 5% this quarter? It's measurable, but it's incremental. It won't force you to innovate.
But when you combine big and specific, you get, what can I do to double sales in the next 6 months?
That forces the brain to abandon incremental tweaks. You can't just make a few extra phone calls to double sales in 6 months. You have to completely reimagine your distribution, your product, or your marketing.
But even that isn't the ultimate form. You have to run that big specific goal through the filter.
The focusing question filter.
Right. You arrive at the great question by applying the formula. What's the one thing I can do to double sales in 6 months, such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary?
That question acts as a cognitive funnel. It forces you to ignore the noise and identify the single most powerful structural change you can make.
I look at the focusing question as a pair of high-end noise-canceling headphones for your brain.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. When you put them on, the ambient static of the world, the trivial emails, the office politics, the minor fires, it all gets muted. You can finally hear the one clear note you're supposed to be playing.
But recognizing the note is only half the battle. You actually have to sit down and play it. You have to execute.
Knowing the right answer doesn't magically generate results. You have to build an entire architecture around the answer to ensure it gets done.
And that transitions us to how highly successful people actually structure their lives. We have to look at the iceberg of extraordinary results.
The iceberg metaphor is perfect here because it illustrates that the results we admire in others are just the visible tip of a much deeper structure.
We see the productivity. We see the wealth, the published book, the successful product launch. That's the ice above the waterline.
But productivity doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is supported by 2 massive layers beneath the surface.
Right. Just below the water is priority. And forming the colossal base at the bottom of the ocean is purpose.
Let's start at the foundational base, living with purpose. Without a clear underlying purpose, Everything else eventually crumbles under stress.
The source material uses the parable of the beggar's bowl to explain the trap most people fall into regarding purpose.
I love this parable. The beggar's bowl represents a life driven solely by the acquisition of external things, money, status, material goods, in the pursuit of happiness.
We think, if I get this promotion, I'll be happy. If I buy this car, I'll be happy.
What human psychology features something called the hedonic treadmill. We get the car, our happiness spikes, and then a month later we adapt, and the baseline resets.
The bowl is bottomless.
If your purpose is just spiking your happiness meter with external acquisitions, you will never find the sustained drive necessary to push through the grueling boredom or the intense difficulty of mastering your one thing.
True purpose is the recognition of what matters most to you on a deeper level. It is the compass heading. It provides the resilience to keep standing the dominoes back up when life knocks them over.
Once you have that massive base of purpose, you move up one layer to priority, living by priority.
We touched on this earlier, but the history of the word itself tells the whole story.
Yeah, the word comes from the Latin prior, meaning first.
And for centuries, into the 1900s, the word priority had no plural. It was a singular concept. You could only have one first thing.
It was an absolute condition. But as modern life grew more complex, society decided to bend the definition. We pluralized it into priorities.
We deluded ourselves into believing we could have 3 or 5 or 10 most important things simultaneously.
To tap into geometric progression, you have to revert to the original singular definition. You have to determine your single priority.
And the mechanism the book provides for connecting your overarching purpose to your daily priority is called goal setting to the now.
This addresses a massive flaw in human cognition known as temporal discounting.
Temporal discounting, that's our brain's tendency to devalue rewards the further away they are in time, right?
Exactly. It's why if offered $100 today or $200 a year from now, a huge percentage of people will take the $100 today.
Even though waiting yields 100% return.
Right. Our primitive brains prioritize immediate guaranteed gratification over abstract future gains. We neurologically disconnect our present self from our future self.
So when I say, I want to write a novel someday, my brain views the reward of that novel as so distant and abstract that it can't muster the motivation to skip watching TV tonight.
Goal setting to the now bridges that gap by forcing you to work backward, creating a chain of immediate relevancy.
You start with your someday goal, which is derived from your purpose.
Then you ask, based on my someday goal, what is the one thing I need to do in the next 5 years to be on track? You bring it closer.
Based on my 5-year goal, what's my 1-year goal?
Then you drill down to the monthly goal, the weekly goal, the daily goal, until you finally ask, what is the one thing I can do right now to be on track for my daily goal?
You connect the 57th domino on the moon directly to the 2-inch domino sitting on your desk.
You make the future consequence immediate. If I don't write for 1 hour right now, the entire chain to the someday goal breaks.
Okay, we have the purpose at the base. We have the priority connecting the future to the present. Now we break the surface of the water.
We reach the tip of the iceberg. Productivity. Living for productivity.
And the specific tactical weapon for productivity is time blocking.
Highly productive people aren't necessarily working more hours than everyone else. They are simply extracting drastically more value out of the hours they do work.
They achieve this by time blocking. They treat their priority with the same reverence as a meeting with a crucial investor or a medical specialist.
They schedule an unmovable appointment with themselves to focus solely on their one thing.
To understand why this is so critical, the source brings in a brilliant framework from Paul Graham, the founder of the startup accelerator Y Combinator.
He divides the professional world into 2 distinct operational modes: the manager schedule and the maker schedule.
A manager's schedule is built on intervals, usually hourly blocks. A manager's job is fundamentally reactive.
Right. They move from a strategy meeting to an email triage to a one-on-one check-in. They shift contexts constantly.
But a maker's schedule, and this applies to writers, programmers, designers, or anyone doing deep strategic thinking, requires massive, uninterrupted blocks of time, usually half days.
Because it takes a maker 30 to 45 minutes just to load the complex architecture of a problem into their working memory.
If a manager schedules a quick 30-minute check-in meeting right in the middle of a maker's afternoon, the manager thinks they only took 30 minutes.
But for the maker, that meeting destroyed the entire half day. It shattered their focus, and they have to start the cognitive loading process all over again.
This is why the optimal strategy for knowledge workers is to combine these schedules. You must fiercely protect your mornings as a maker.
You time block 3 to 4 hours early in the day when your willpower battery is fully charged, and you dedicate that entire block to your one thing.
You lock the door. You shut down the email. Then, in the afternoon, you switch to the manager schedule. You handle the meetings, the calls, the administrative maintenance.
One and done in the morning. If you don't secure that time block, your most important work will always be a victim of everyone else's urgencies.
But here's the reality check. I can block off my calendar from 8 a.m. to noon tomorrow. I can color code it. But the moment I sit down, the universe is going to test that block.
Oh, absolutely.
My phone will ring, a coworker will have an emergency, my inbox will start flooding. How do we actually defend this time block in a world that refuses to respect it?
Putting it on a calendar is just ink. Defending it requires a profound shift in behavior. It requires adopting what the source material calls the 3 commitments and actively fighting off the 4 thieves of productivity.
This is the execution phase. This is what separates people who merely understand the concept of leverage from the people who actually use it to change their lives.
Let's arm the listener. Commitment number 1. Follow the path of mastery.
We usually think of mastery as an endpoint, like receiving a diploma. Once you get it, you are a master.
But mastery is not a destination. It is a continuous, dynamic journey. The book uses a beautiful historical anecdote to illustrate this. Jigoro Kano, the legendary founder of judo.
He was an undisputed master of his martial art.
But as he was nearing the end of his life, he allegedly instructed his students to bury him wearing his white belt.
The belt of a beginner.
Exactly. He wanted to visually symbolize that no matter how high he climbed, he was fundamentally a student. He was always learning.
Following the path of mastery means you commit to becoming a master of what you have already learned, while simultaneously remaining a humble apprentice to what lies ahead.
When you time block your one thing, you aren't just putting in hours. You are actively seeking to improve your capability in that specific area every single day.
That apprentice mindset is crucial for the second commitment, which might be the most paradigm-shifting concept in the entire deep dive, moving from E to P.
Moving from an entrepreneurial mindset to a purposeful mindset.
When we face a new challenge, our default response is the E approach, the entrepreneurial approach.
This doesn't mean starting a business. It means relying on your natural enthusiasm, your innate talents, and your raw energy to get the job done. It's doing what comes naturally.
And doing what comes naturally works until it doesn't. My favorite analogy for this is playing a video game.
Oh, I love this one.
You enter a new level, and you use your natural reflexes to run and jump over obstacles. You are mashing the jump button, and you are making progress. But eventually, you reach a wall that is 50 feet high.
And no matter how hard you mash the jump button, your natural jumping ability has a hard limit.
You hit a ceiling of achievement. The E player just keeps jumping, getting more and more frustrated, eventually concluding that the level is unbeatable.
But the P player, the purposeful player, realizes that raw effort is no longer the solution. They pause the game, they open their inventory.
They look for a new system or a new tool. They equip a grappling hook and they scale the wall effortlessly.
The source material uses the metaphor of cutting firewood. If you ask an E to cut a massive pile of wood, they grab an axe, rely on their natural strength, and swing until their hands bleed.
A P looks at the pile, puts the axe down, and asks, "Where can I get a chainsaw?"
Moving from E to P means acknowledging when you have hit the ceiling of your natural abilities and deliberately seeking out new models, new systems, or new mentors to break through that ceiling.
You don't try harder, you try differently.
Which requires a tremendous amount of self-awareness. And that leads to the third commitment. Live the accountability cycle. You have to take complete, unadulterated ownership of your outcomes.
This is the antithesis of the victim mentality. It's so easy to play the victim when things go wrong.
The economy shifted. The client was unreasonable. The algorithm changed. We find external scapegoats to protect our egos.
But the accountability cycle breaks that loop. You have to recognize that your actions dictate your outcomes, and your outcomes must inform your future actions.
If the result is a failure, a highly accountable person doesn't look for an excuse. They look at the specific actions they took, they evaluate the feedback, and they adjust their approach.
They refuse to sit in the passenger seat of their own life.
So those are the internal commitments. Mastery, moving from E to P, and accountability. They build your internal armor.
But you still have to face the external world. You have to fight off the 4 thieves of productivity that will constantly attempt to infiltrate your time block.
Thief number 1 is the inability to say no. This is notoriously difficult, especially for high achievers who want to be seen as team players.
We want to help. We want to be agreeable.
But every time you say yes to a request that is not your one thing, you are simultaneously implicitly saying no to your one thing.
Time is a zero-sum game. The rule of thumb here is that a single yes to your priority must be defended by 1,000 no's to everything else.
Steve Jobs famously said that focus is about saying no. It's about rejecting hundreds of good ideas so you can execute the one great idea.
You have to view your time block as sacred ground. If you let people trample it with trivial requests, you are giving away your leverage.
But when you start saying no, things get messy. Which brings us to thief number 2, fear of chaos.
If you are truly dedicating your peak morning hours to your one thing, the rest of your life is not going to stay perfectly tidy.
Your inbox will pile up. Minor administrative tasks will get delayed. Your desk might get cluttered.
If you are a perfectionist, this chaos will cause massive anxiety. The temptation will be to pause your deep work to go clean up the mess.
You want to answer the emails just to get to inbox 0 so you can focus? But inbox 0 is a mirage. It just fills right back up.
Exactly. You have to make peace with the mess. You have to accept that pursuing extraordinary results requires allowing certain fires to burn temporarily.
You have to trust that the massive progress you are making on your lead domino will eventually generate the resources, the time, or the leverage to easily sweep up the chaos later.
If you constantly interrupt the vital few to manage the trivial many, you will never move the needle.
Thief number 3 is much more physical and incredibly personal. Poor health habits. We act like our brains operate independently of our bodies.
Gary Keller actually shares a very vulnerable story in the book about ignoring this thief.
He was building his empire, pushing himself to the absolute limit, and he neglected his physical foundation. It caught up to him severely.
He developed interstitial cystitis and had to take cholesterol-fighting statins.
And the medication caused a debilitating side effect where his legs would shake uncontrollably. He literally couldn't sit still or function properly, let alone engage in deep, focused time blocking.
It's the old saying, if you don't take care of your body, where will you live? You can have the best strategy in the world, but if your biological machine breaks down, the strategy is useless.
You have to view sleep, nutrition, and exercise not as distractions from your work, but as the foundational fuel that makes your high-level cognitive work possible.
Managing your physical energy is a prerequisite for managing your mental focus.
And finally, we face thief number 4. Environment doesn't support goals. You can make the 3 commitments. You can fight off the first 3 thieves.
But if you are trying to do deep work in an environment engineered for distraction, you will eventually lose. Willpower depletes. Environment is persistent.
If your office is an open-plan nightmare with people constantly tapping you on the shoulder,
Or if your computer screen is littered with 50 open tabs and Slack notifications pinging every 10 seconds, your environment is actively stealing from you.
and it's not just physical spaces, it's the people around you. If you are surrounded by chronic complainers or people who disrespect your time blocks, they will drag you down to their level of reactivity.
You have to ruthlessly curate your environment. You have to put up physical barriers if necessary, wear the noise-canceling headphones, put a do not disturb sign on the door, turn off the Wi-Fi router for 3 hours.
As George Anders is quoted in the text, there is an art to clearing away the clutter to focus on what matters. It just requires the courage to be a little bit unorthodox.
It requires the courage to say, my work matters enough to protect it. We have covered a monumental amount of ground in this deep dive.
We really have.
We started by looking at the sheer, undeniable physics of the domino effect. We saw how a 2-inch domino, through a geometric progression, can eventually topple a structure the size of the distance to the moon.
We dismantled the 6 cultural lies that keep us pushing against the Eiffel Tower instead of finding our leverage. We debunked the myths of equal importance, multitasking, constant discipline, endless willpower, perfect balance, and the fear of big success.
We unlocked the master key, the focusing question. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary?
We explored how to build the iceberg of extraordinary results by grounding ourselves in purpose, connecting the future to the present through priority, and defending our productivity through time blocking on a maker's schedule.
And we laid out the execution manual, committing to the path of mastery, upgrading from an entrepreneurial effort to a purposeful system, owning our outcomes, and systematically defeating the 4 thieves that threaten our focus.
So look at your desk right now. Look at the open windows on your computer. Look at that sprawling, terrifying to-do list.
The overwhelming blur of modern life doesn't clear up by accident. It clears up through ruthless, intentional choice.
Your mission today is not to do more. It is to do less, but to do the right thing. Use the filter, find your 2-inch domino, be a maker tomorrow morning, and knock it down.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, and it's a perspective shift on everything we've just explored. We have spent this entire deep dive examining the positive application of the domino effect.
We've looked at how one focused, positive habit, one protected time block, compounds over time to build a bridge to the moon.
But you must remember that the laws of physics and the mechanics of geometric progression are entirely neutral. They work exactly the same way in reverse.
A negative geometric progression.
Exactly. Think about your daily routines. What is the one negative domino in your life? What is the one small, seemingly harmless compromise that you are flicking over every single morning?
Maybe it's hitting the snooze button 3 times. Maybe it's opening social media before your feet even touch the floor. Maybe it's saying yes to just one trivial meeting during your peak energy hours.
A 2-inch plastic tile seems significant. But if a positive 2-inch domino can reach the moon by the 57th iteration, what does your negative domino look like when it hits the 57th iteration in your life?
If you don't find it and stop it, what massive destructive force are you unknowingly setting in motion every day?
The compounding interest of bad habits. That is terrifying, but it is exactly the kind of clarity we need. We are always setting a chain reaction motion, whether we are conscious of it or not. You are the first domino. It is entirely up to you to decide which direction you are going to fall. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Go find your one thing.